Hello listeners, and welcome to another episode of Voices from the Northeast. It is cold outside. It's January here, we're a few weeks in, and there's snow on the ground, ice on the top of your car in the morning, and I imagine everyone has turned the thermostat up a few extra degrees already. That brings us nicely to today's episode. In today's episode, we're going to actually talk to my mum, and she's going to tell us about her childhood in Ashington, and certainly the days before you had the thermostat on the wall. We're going to hear about the outside toilet, the bath hanging up in the backyard, and sitting in front of the fire just to keep yourself warm. Without further ado, brace yourselves for a cold one. I'm going to dial in and let my mum tell her story.
Right, what do you want me to talk about? Cold, frosty mornings?
Yes. So all I wanted you to do was, tell us what it was like. I mean, for example, we woke up this morning, it was really cold, and put the heating on, and kind of take that for granted. So take us back to, the 1960s, and tell us what it was like then.
I can probably even go further back than that. I can go back to the late 50s, probably. Yes, it was blooming cold. I can remember, very, very cold. Yeah, Grandma used to get up very early in the morning and put the fire on. She would have to go and get the sticks which Grandad had chopped and lay the fire and light it. I was very, very lucky in the fact that by the time I came into the living room, there was a fire on, but that was it for the whole house.
So I was just going to say, we're not talking central heating, we're not talking a fire that heats radiators in another room.
Oh, no, nothing like that. You had to wait until the fire sort of what we call bleezed up, and then you would have to put some more coal on and wait till that settles, and then you would eventually get a bit heat. But when you woke up, it was nothing to see the windows heavily frosted on the inside. And you would have been in bed probably. Some would have had a hat on. I can remember sometimes going to bed and putting a hat on because the bedroom was so cold. In the late 50s, early 60s, I was in the same bedroom as my mum and dad for a long time. So it was pretty cold, let's put it that way. You would try and get dressed basically under the bedclothes if your mother would let you get away with it.
So whereabouts are we talking in a house like that? So just to try and give people a picture of it.
We had, when my parents emigrated to Australia after the war, they were £10 poms. The government had a voucher where if you wanted to emigrate. However, they didn't settle. After about 6 years, they came back. We lived in with my grandmother first for a few weeks. And then we eventually got a one-bedroom flat. And it was one bedroom, one communal room, which had the kitchen table in, the sofa, everything like that, and a scullery with no hot water.
So and just for somebody of my age, what the heck is a scullery?
A scullery is basically almost like a big cupboard. And that was where your hot water was, your little kitchen stove. And sometimes the hot plates were separate. And that was it. The toilet was at the bottom of the yard.
That was so whereabouts?
This was down Hawthorne Road.
Wow.
In would it be 1959? Maybe we moved there, I would think. And I was in the same bedroom as my parents. So yes, we had no hot water. I remember at first we had no hot water. Everything was boiled. There was a big old-fashioned range in the living room, which was a big black leaded thing where there was an oven on the side and you heated the kettle on and everything on that. So that basically warmed the whole house up. But they were taken out, I would say, early 60s, that, modernisation came and these gorgeous old ranges that you see in places like Beamish and things like that.
Yeah.
They were taken out. and a modern fireplace was put in, and we got a cooker, and we got it was a little, oh gosh, I can't remember what you called it. It was like a little geyser on the wall that supplied the hot water separate to the cold water. So
Wow.
yeah, and
Did you say that was a flat? Did you say
it was
that
a downstairs flat, a 1-bedroom downstairs flat down Hawthorne Road. They're probably all houses now. It was just up from St Andrew's Church.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, down Hawthorne Road, 144 Hawthorne Road.
And where did you say the toilet was?
Outside, down the bottom, next to the coal house at the bottom of. So, and it was a communal one. Upstairs flat used it as well. The couple upstairs, Dennis and Audrey, I remember their names were, and they used the same loo as we did. It was just between 5 of us, basically. Yeah. So yes, it was pretty cold. I was lucky because my mum was really nice to me. She used to put me clothes in the morning to get ready for school on the clothes horse near the fire so they would warm up.
Wow.
So, I mean, I'm sure not every mum did that, but I was slightly coddled, should I say, when I was a young girl. So I got up and my clothes were nice and warm as I came in to get it. But it was cold. It was, yeah, I can remember it being very, very cold. And when mums used to have to go down the yard to get coal, or you would put it in a pail at the side of the fireplace so that you could put coal on the fire easily. But it wasn't a very big one, and you would have to go back down the yard and fill it up again. And the coal man would deliver once a week a load of coal. So yeah, it was quite cool in those days. And of course, the outside loo, there was always a tiny little paraffin heater in there, just a tiny little thing so that the pipes didn't freeze. But I do remember going into the outside loo when I was a little girl and shouting on my dad to say the water in the toilet had frozen solid. So yes, and he would come with a bit warm water and try and pour it down to defrost it. So a heck of a lot difference from just turning a little dial nowadays.
Good Lord. And you said you were 3 of you in a 1-bedroom house. So how long was it before you had your own bedroom?
Gosh, I would say I was at junior school, so it would be about 7, probably 7 or 8 before we actually went really well up in the world. We got a prefab. Now, prefabs, I don't know if you know what a prefab is, but they were built for the housing shortage after the war. They were prefabricated houses. I'm desperately trying to remember whether they did have central heating. I don't think they did. I really don't remember, but I don't think it was as cold a house. I can't remember that, I'll be honest. I can't remember that. But we had an inside toilet and a bathroom. So yes, when you think back, yeah, you forget things until someone asks you things like this. I mean, to heat the beds at night, it was, I can remember my grandma would sometimes take a shelf out the oven and wrap it in a towel and put it in the bed, or the other thing would be a brick. There was stone hot water bottles, which she had, but I do remember my mum getting the rubber hot water bottles, but the seal wasn't always, they didn't last in them days, and you would wake up in the morning and think you'd peed the bed, and actually you hadn't. The seal had gone on the hot water bottle. And if you can imagine, no duvets, it was, brush cotton sheets, and lots of heavy blankets. And if you couldn't afford blankets, it was coats. You've just put your own, coats from the family were put on the bed to keep you warm. So, yeah, it was, you just got on with it because you didn't know anything different. We didn't have heating, so you didn't really know. Nobody had it, so you didn't know any different, But I remember going to school, and the school didn't have radiators even when I first started, especially at the junior school. I can't remember them having radiators and us having to do exercises in the classroom when you
To
went
warm up.
in to warm us up before the day started.
When you say the junior school, which school we're talking about?
My junior school was the North Junior School.
So
North
what's
School.
that?
That's now Cavendish, is it? I don't know what it's called now.
Is that the one? Did they tear it down and build the new build?
Yes, they built the new one.
So it was next to Second Avenue
I was
Church.
just going to say it's Coco's or whatever it was. It's now
Okay.
houses now. But yes, beside the PIV, the bingo hall, that was the North School. Yeah, definitely. And I do remember going to the classrooms and having to do a bit of exercise. But I do remember I didn't pass my 11 plus and I just went to a secondary modern school. And Hurst Park had open arches around the quadrangle in the middle. The classrooms were around the outside, then there was arches. And those arches were open. So when you came out of your classroom, you came out into the elements basically till they filled them all in. That would be early 60s, I think, they filled all them in. So yes, and what a difference! I was going to say,
because obviously by the 90s they were definitely filled in when I was there.
Yes, yeah.
But you had the old miners' school up Asherton High School, the annex building had exactly the same.
It was the same thing.
Open archways, and they left their archways open, didn't they?
That's right.
So you kind of got an idea of what Hurst Park must have been like.
That's right. They were bitterly cold, you know.
Yeah, nobody liked morning lessons in the annex in winter because it was freezing cold.
That's right. That's right. And you had central heating.
We did.
Yeah, we didn't. Or if we did, it didn't work very well. And the other thing was we used to get free milk in those days in the 50s and 60s. And the milk would be frozen so solid, it would be like the cream would be 2 inches above the top of the bottle of milk. Oh. And they used to put, when we did get radiators, they used to put the crates of milk in the corridors next to the radiator sort of thing, or downstairs next to the boilers to defrost the milk. So you got this lukewarm milk. Can you imagine what that defrosted milk, sort of tepid, sometimes had gone off the bottles. Oh, I hated it.
Lovely stuff.
Yeah, I hated it, I'll be honest. But yeah, we just survived. I mean, we were better off than, say, our grandparents even, you know, who they didn't even have sort of nice thick blankets. They would just have their coats on the bed, you know. So each generation.
And I suppose, I mean, so what was Grandad doing for work at this time? Because I'm thinking, we're here thinking this from your point of view as a child, getting up on a cold morning and going to school. But I mean, he was getting up on a cold morning and going to work.
In the 50s, when we first came home from Australia, he actually worked as a driver for, a bakery that used to be at the top end of Asherton. I think it was Proudlocks, I'm not sure. And it used to be a bakery, and he used to be on the van. Now, in those days, you had vans that went round and sold bread and bits of grocery and all sorts of things, and they went up country. Because I remember before I started school, sometimes he would take me up with him for the day, probably to get us out, probably a washing day, because in those days you had a wash house that you had to set fire to the boiler. You had to put a fire under the boiler and boil the water up to do your washing. So I think sometimes Grandad would take me off for the day and we'd go up all these places. I mean, I remember, I didn't know at the time, but he used to deliver bread to places like Linden Hall when it was 2 sisters who owned it and things like that. In the middle of the most dreadful winters, because we had much more wintry winters in them days, should I say, with a lot more snow, you know. So, yeah. Oh, gosh, there's so many things when I think back now. Yeah, freezing cold, absolutely, you know. And it was a case of it was no man-made fibres, so it was wool coats and leather shoes, and when they got wet, your feet were frozen. When your mittens, if you went out to play in the snow, when your mittens got wet, it was socks on your hands to play with. You know, I do remember that. And they would all be lying drying as you came in and changed your socks and everything. Or wellies, can you imagine? Cold wellies all the time, just with a pair of socks on. I know. But like I said, each generation something progresses. I know people say it was the good old days, but give me a dial on the wall nowadays and the whole house heated than a coal fire where when you stepped away from the coal fire behind the sofa or something like that, it was cold and not another bit of heating in the rest of the house.
Crikey.
Yeah, you can't imagine it, can you?
No, it is hard to imagine. Like you say, it's not. But having not lived with it, just as I suppose at the time you accepted it because you didn't have central heating, you didn't know anybody with central heating, so it's equally difficult to try and imagine it now. The closest you get to it now is when someone's heating breaks and everyone panics.
That's right. Absolute mad. I mean, we used to have, the bath when I was little, because we didn't have a bathroom, was the tin bath in front of the fire, and in winter, because it used to hang in the yard. So you can imagine how bitterly cold it was. And you've got to imagine that the water had to be heated in kettles on the fire, in pans and kettles. So you didn't want to waste a lot of water by heating the bath up first. So I can remember the sort of the bath being brought in and a good hour before you would have a bath, and just laying on the floor in front of the fire to try and warm the tin. So it was nice cold when the water hit it. And I do remember my mum having a bath, or my dad even having a bath. And we used to have like a 3 clothes horse, so it went round, you know what I mean?
Oh, yes.
So the big towels would be draped over it. Because if you opened the door to go into the scullery, it was freezing cold. This icy blast came in. So kept the towels round, kept us warm whilst we had a bath. We certainly didn't have a soak in the bath like you do now.
No, I don't imagine you would.
I remember I would be bathed first, probably because I was little and wasn't that dirty. Then my mum would have a bath, and then my dad would have a bath. Yeah, because I was always by that time in bed. So my dad, you weren't allowed to see your parents in those days. So yes, I would be in bed when they had their bath. So happy days. Like I say, we survived. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, yes. On that cold note, ma'am, I will let you go and turn the dial back up and get nice and warm.
Not with your dad. You know what he's like. Every time I turn the heating up, he turns it down. All right then.
All right. Thank you very, very, very
much. No bother.
Yeah, I bet a lot of people will have a lot of response thoughts to that, because I bet there's a lot of people can remember being that cold.
I think there'll be an awful lot of people. Very much so. Yeah. All right then. See ya. Bye.
Bye.
Wow. I mean, cold. I honestly cannot get my head around the idea of going out into the backyard and bringing the cold bathtub in. Can you imagine bringing the bathtub in for a cold, from the cold into your house for a bath on a January evening? I mean, wow, that's got to have been cold. Like, wow. I guess it reminds us that, our a lot of us anyway take central heating for granted. It's really easy to turn the dial up on the wall right now and warm us up. Goodness me. Well, I hope that episode was interesting. I mean, it certainly was to me. I hope it was to you as a listener. I'd love to think that it's jogged a few of your own memories of that time that you'd like to share with us on the podcast. These first few episodes of the series, I'm really putting them out there to try and encourage people to think about their history and come forward and share those stories. Just like you do on a Facebook page when you see a photograph and you want to drop a 5-line comment to say, I remember that, it used to be like this for me. I want you to do exactly the same with this podcast, so that future episodes we can really fill with lots of different people's takes on certain things. So if this episode has really reminded you about those cold mornings, about the bath being in the backyard or the outside toilet, anything like that, get yourself over to our website, anchor.fm/voices from the northeast, and press the message button. It'll ask for a few details so that once you've sent me the voicemail message, it can notify you by email that you're going to be included in an episode. It's brilliant. So please take a moment, even write a few notes down on a piece of paper first if you want to be, really clear in what you say. Or just go over to anchor.fm/voices from the northeast. Leave me your memories so I can include them in a future episode. Well, I'm going to leave that there for today. Stay warm and safe, everybody, and I'll talk to you on the next episode.